I'm Tom Landry with Benchmark Real Estate, and each panelist can introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Kaitlin Roderigue. I'm a buyer agent on the Landry team. I'm also an associate broker.
Hello, I'm Ed Gosselin. I'm a senior mortgage banker with Total Mortgage. I've been in the business for about 30 years and our office is in town, Portland.
Morning, everybody. My name is Ben McCall. I'm an attorney at Jensen, Baird, Gardner, and Henry, which is also in Portland, where I practice mostly municipal land use and zoning law.
Good morning, folks. My name is Chris Tweedie. I'm the owner of Confidence Building Inspections based here in Portland, Maine. Good morning.
Before we get started, I want to share a few of the things that we are doing as a company. We have implemented a few programs that are allowing us to work with buyers and sellers in a virtual capacity. Now, whether we like it or not, that's seemingly where our world is going, at least for the time being. We have the ability to do this now more than we ever have, and a lot of us in the real estate world have been practicing in a capacity where we can work from wherever we're sitting and help people in a variety of capacities. I know that that's happened in a lot of our ancillary vendors that come into our lives, from lenders who can be sitting in their living room and helping people fill out pre-qualification documentation. So one of the programs that we've implemented is called virtual house calls. So if you're a seller, we do full FaceTime tours of properties, and you can take us through. It's like we're there. Typically when I'm working with a seller, the first thing we do is we have a conversation. We talk about their home just a little bit. They give me the address, and then we walk and set up a time to tour their home. It's really a good idea to be able to do that so that we're not in a situation where we're just guessing or going even worse than that by a zestimate online of what their home would be worth. There's something about that tangible walkthrough and that tour. Now, that being said, over the last several years, we have had a lot of buyers and sellers in a situation where maybe the first introduction is that it's virtual. It's a meeting face-to-face, but it's online through a portal like this or FaceTime. So in this case, because of our wanting to limit the exposure for everybody, we're doing a lot of those first meetings virtually. So if you want to, and you've been thinking about a sale, whether it's last fall or the year before, and it was leading up to this year, and whether you even want to list this spring, or you're thinking about, having that meeting to help you identify the things that you should be doing and could be doing, we can do it virtually. You do not have to be held hostage by the crisis that we're in. You can take action, and there's things that can be done. So I encourage you to reach out to us. You can go on to benchmarkmaine.com, get my information there, get our team's information, and I will share with you as we go along, and on that summary sheet again, my information. So that's the house call side of things. I'll walk through with you virtually. We'll tour around the property. And then we can go into, hey, here's what I think the property is worth. You'll take me down into parts of the property like the basement and the attic and these other things that you may not typically do in a normal situation. And then we can also tie in the staging people, whether at that meeting or subsequent meeting. We can pull in our staging consultants. We can even pull in contractors. And we even have COVID-19 approved contractors who are safe. And it is deemed an essential thing. Construction is deemed an essential service, so they can go into your home and perform some of these things to help your home get ready for listing now or in the future. So that's house calls. Virtual showings is something that we're going to talk about when we get into buyers, but that is another offering that we have where the agent goes into the listing for you, and they're touring you through in a virtual way. You're on FaceTime with them, and you're touring through the property. And that's really designed to allow you to stay in place, stay in your home, right? Maybe you've got kids and these other things. So we don't want 5 or 6 people going into somebody else's house. So we're doing this in a very, the least impactful way possible, outside of just looking at the virtual tour or the video of the property. And it allows you to have a really good sense of that. Now, as Kaitlin, who's the buyer broker, will share shortly, I mean, we've dealt with folks who are in California, have never seen a house till they get to the final walkthrough just before the closing. So this was a trend that we saw increasing. It accounted for about 2% of benchmark sales last year, where buyers were had never seen the house until they came through. They only saw it under virtual capacity. But through this process that we're going through, this unfortunate thing, COVID-19, going forward, I think we're going to see a lot more of this stuff happening and people buying virtually, like we're used to now versus years ago, buying on Amazon versus at a bricks and mortar store. So finally, we have this Jump Starter program that we're offering folks, and that is where we can take care of everything. So when and if this gets back to whatever new normal is, whatever that is, we have the ability to have everything in place now. If you choose not to list now or buy now, we have everything in place to help you be ready and to capitalize on this when things get set. That's from pre-qualification letters to making sure if you have a little dings in your credit, how you get those things straightened out to get even a better interest rate, to making sure all the paperwork is ready for your home so that when we're ready to list, when we get some of that good news, hopefully in months versus longer, you can be ready and you can be poised to take advantage of the market. So I want to get into sort of a general thought about the real estate market, and we'll turn it over to our experts. So the general market I want to share with you, and this is really, I think, surprising to a lot of folks, is we're seeing sales. I think it's again, one of these things, how can that be happening if people are supposed to be staying in place in their homes? Some of this is folks who have been listed, right? They were already on the market. They were on the market for the last several months. Some new listings are coming on the market. Obviously, we are seeing folks who have vacant homes or vacant condos. Those are the easiest properties to list and sell. However, with precautions, we are still listing properties and we're still working with buyers, and we're going to talk about that. So first and foremost, real estate is still happening. The process is still moving forward. Are there less buyers? Sure. Maybe are those buyers a little more serious? Yeah, I think so. Are there advantages to being a buyer right now? Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Are there advantages to being a seller? I think there are too. Are there challenges in any of these situations? You bet. So, I think this is a complicated subject. That's why we have really smart people on our panel. There's going to be ongoing discussions around this. And as the realities, like I said, change, we're going to be able to adapt to that. And you now have, as listeners to this, a group of people who can help you navigate this and navigate your specific situation. So I want to turn towards buyers first and foremost. But before we do that, I want to give Ben at Jensen Baird an opportunity to share a few things about where we are, I guess, globally. And Ben, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tom. And again, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Lawyers are known as being notoriously long-winded, so I'm going to try and keep this as streamlined as possible, and then obviously answer to the best of my ability questions as they pop up along the way. So the first thing I wanted to touch upon, which has obviously been in the news a lot this week, have been the number of shelter-in-place orders that have popped up across the state. Most notably, of course, the state of Maine from the middle of last week has either call it a shelter-in-place or a stay-at-home order in place that basically requires all non-essential businesses to shut down. That requires people to stay in their homes to the extent that they can, obviously with exceptions of going to get groceries and medical care and things like that. Luckily, from a real estate perspective, the Maine Association of Realtors did reach out to the governor's office middle of the way through last week, and real estate brokers are considered to be an essential business that can stay open statewide, at least in terms of the state of Maine is concerned. There have been a couple of other municipalities that have actually gone a step further and and enacted their own shelter-in-place orders, Portland being the most notable of those, but also South Portland, Bangor, Brunswick, and potentially more in the coming weeks. Portland's order is a little bit more specific than the state's, and it's also a little more specific, but also a little more vague in places. And so, the advice that we've been giving the clients, including real estate brokers, has been to, as Tom mentioned, to keep everything as digital as possible and to really limit the number of people that are going out there in the world, be it to a brick and mortar business or on a showing of a house, either from a buyer's or seller's perspective. So if there are more specific questions on that, I'm sure I can get to the shelter-in-place orders and how those affect things a little bit later. But before I turn it back to Tom, I wanted to touch a little bit upon the CARES Act, which was just signed by President Trump. And I'm seeing a couple of questions down already popping up about that. It's an 880-page bill that Congress passed this week and was signed by the president, $2.2 trillion worth of investment. And I don't have it all memorized, but a couple of things I think are important to remember, both from a real estate perspective, but also from a small business perspective, because so many of our real estate agents are operating in a small business setting, and obviously investors are as well. So there are a couple of big things that the CARES Act helps us with. The first of which are a whole number of small business association disaster loans that are going to be available to small businesses who may need them. Those are coming in pretty low at 3.75% interest, and can help folks sort of weather the storm. There's also a $10,000 advance that can come out of those loans that potentially could be forgiven by the federal government. So that's some quick cash to help people if they need it. There's also been a lot of talk about payroll protection over the last couple of weeks. This is one of the bigger parts of the bill. And so for any business out there who has 500 or fewer employees, which as we know is a large number, certainly a majority of Maine businesses, you're eligible to get loans from the federal government that are equal to up to 2.5% or 2.5 times, 250% of your average monthly payroll. And those loans are meant truly to keep businesses afloat. And so those loans can be used to pay outstanding rent or mortgage payments, obviously your payroll and salaries, utilities, that sort of thing. And the best part, of course, is that if small businesses are keeping their payrolls pretty constant between now and the end of June, then most, if not all of those loans can be forgiven by the federal government. So that's going to be a big help. There is the rebate program. What we've heard, sort of one of the bigger portions of this bill have been or will be these $1,200 plus checks that are going to be coming to many people across the country. So for everybody who is at or below $75,000 of income, and this is based on your 2018, not your 2019 tax returns, you could be eligible for up to $1,200 immediately and $2,400 for a married couple. So those can be very helpful. And then a couple of other sort of more real estate specific things that I wanted to touch upon for those who may be owners already. If you are owning a building out there, a property that is federally financed or federally guaranteed, you're dealing with Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, et cetera. The federal government's going to be offering, if you need it, up to 90 days of forbearance on those loans, which could be helpful in a lot of circumstances. But sort of looking forward into the future, the CARES Act did include multiple billions of dollars of stimulus that's meant to be going to not only Section 8 vouchers to help people with finding affordable places to live, but also money that's going to be going to hopefully aid construction and development once we're on the other side of this. So there's obviously a lot to talk about. There are many more things that I didn't touch upon here, but of course happy to answer any questions as they pop up along the way. And so I'll turn it back to Tom.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. Well done. I know there's a couple of questions that have come in. And Ben, I'm not sure if you want to take a look at those and chime in on that as we go along. We can certainly wait a little bit at the end of this or take them on the way through. I guess I leave that up to you in your section.
Yeah, I mean, I see a quick question, just the first one that popped up about specific benefits for buyers and sellers of residential real estate. It's a very good question, and certainly a broad one. There is, like I said, $2.2 trillion worth of stimulus. Most of it is going to all, pretty much every corner of the federal government, and programs like real estate development, either from a HUD perspective or other investments locally that will hopefully help out buyers and sellers of real estate sort of indirectly. There are also a number of tax provisions that are meant to make the writing off of real estate losses, for one, to be easier over the course of the coming years. I'm not going to get into specifics on those, for one, because I'm not a tax attorney, and two, because I think it's probably easier for anybody who's interested in those rules to talk to their accountants or other professionals who are doing that every day. But I guess the last point I'd point out is that it's going to take some time to figure out really what the effect of this bill is going to be, where the money is really going to find itself, and how it's going to be injected into the economy. So it may not be the best answer, but like so many things, the effect of these developments are going to take some time to flush out a bit.
Thank you, Ben. All right, I think that's switched over. Ed, do you want to talk at all about and touch base at all about some of the programs there? Ben had mentioned potentially some either loan forgiveness or these type of things. Is there any programs there that we can expand on a little bit for current homeowners?
Ben touched upon the provisions already that Fannie and Freddie are taking, and it appears as though that's usually what happens in our industry. Is they're normally the ones that kind of step in, put their toe in the water first, and then generally speaking, others will follow, and we're seeing that. Many banks, many lenders that service their own loans and keep their own loans have also stepped in and started making provisions kind of mirroring exactly what Fannie and Freddie have already agreed to do. And so at this point, what we're telling anybody that I'm getting phone calls from asking about the process, the process typically is to follow up with whoever happens to be servicing the mortgage at that point and make the arrangements going forward. So it's not something that's just arbitrarily done or agreed upon day one. It is necessary for the person to be able to follow up with the loan servicer and make whatever arrangements that they need to make going forward to be able to kind of fit their financial needs.
Yeah, and I think one thing that maybe Ben shared on, and any of us who own property, I've seen some banks like instantly send me something in the mail that says, "We're here for you. Here's that email. Here's how we're handling it," and being proactive about deferring payments. And I've seen others that we've sent emails and you get nothing and you've had no response. So I'm sure there's some resources. We'll have them available on our website. We're going to have a variety of different links But part of it is there's probably some things that are coming out of that 800-page document that you have to sift through then, but that are going to come out, and we're going to get a little more information as we go over the next several weeks. And we will try to share that. We'll try to share that via email. So make sure that we capture your information, send us an email, and then you can certainly visit our website as well. Okay, I want to turn it over here or start transitioning to sellers, and to me, I look at where we are right now as sort of the decision tree. If you are not currently listed, and this is a conversation I've had with many of my clients, you have a decision to make, right? Do I list or do I not, right? And there's good and bad that comes from either branch you go down with that. And I'd like to spend some time talking about these types of things. And then the other side is I'm currently listed, and what should I do? Now, obviously, disclaimer here, there may be people here listening to us that are currently listed with somebody. And I would say to you, you follow their advice, turn to your team. This is not meant to be a solicitation if you're already working with somebody to garner your business or interfere with that relationship that you have with them. However, I just want to give you some of the things that I've talked to folks that have contacted me in the last several weeks that are brand new to listing their properties in the midst of what we're going through, and also people who I've been working with. Oftentimes, in what I do on the seller side of things, I'm talking to folks months, if not years in advance, some 3 or 4 or 5 years in advance of selling their homes, to have an ongoing conversation about what they need to do. Should we be doing this and that? And to me, those folks that plan ahead usually plan for success. They're addressing all of those little things in a way that's very systematic to get ready to go on the market. So if I'm the person who's been planning, and I have a lovely property, which I just spoke to a client about, who's getting ready to list, and they've been getting ready and sort of building up to this springtime, should they move forward or should they not? And it is an interesting thing. I don't know if there's any one right answer. So it is person by person, house by house, situation by situation. The pluses I see about moving forward are, things are still moving. Buyers are still out there. Rates are still fantastic. Yes, you may not have the open houses with 30 and 40 people and the bidding wars that we were at in the past, but you may have those. Recently, we've gone multiple offers on several properties. I have a very broad network of other agents that we touch base with in the industry locally, and we are still seeing multiple offers, even though they're not out of these big, massive group showings or open houses. A lot of times the techniques we're using are similar to that. And one technique we've used, and we're trying to do it even more now, is, and again, think of this virtual experience coupled with delayed acceptance. So delayed acceptance allows people to see a listing. It goes out online. You wait several days to have showings happen, and then you're collecting offers. It's like a call for offers after several days. So that is also leading us towards having enough time for buyers to experience the property. They can look at it in a much more elaborate way. We are going through and videoing properties, and again, not just showing the wonderful things that we usually do when we're selling properties, but also showing the basement, showing some of the things that we normally wouldn't show, an attic or touring around the house in a potentially non-flattering way. It's used as a checklist for folks to eliminate some of the looky-loos out there that would come through normally and sometimes say, it really wasn't right. So we're going over and above with our videos, which limits the numbers of showings. However, those people that still come through are much more serious. So the pro list thing is you've got less competition. There are still people that need to move. Rates are fantastic. And the market around here is still pretty decent. Let's not forget that we think, I think a lot of us think of Portland and Greater Portland as sort of changing very, very much in the last 10 or so years. And it has changed, and a lot of that has been good. And if you're in the real estate world, we've seen prosperity, we've seen things being built, and we've seen people moving into our greater Portland area. However, globally or nationally, we are not considered anywhere remotely a boom town, right? This is not where you come in, like where a couple of my siblings moved in from in these areas like Arizona or Texas or Atlanta, where you have tracts of homes, and a big development down there is 1,000 houses, right? A big development in Portland, Maine and greater Portland, Maine is 20 houses, right? So our inventory is not such where we have a lot in the pipeline, a lot sitting vacant. So if things soften a little bit, and I'm that person sitting on the sideline introducing my house that I've been in for a while, I'm not facing something where the market has just fallen out completely below me. So I think scarcity and the inability for us to build very, very easily is somehow a bit of a saving grace for sellers. So that's the pro. Well, the wait could be, why would I do this now? Why would I want those people in my house? We can all understand those type of things. Yeah, rates are good, but they've bounced up and down, and Ed can talk about that a little bit. But we also may be in a situation where if people are coming in, am I just introducing my house into a time when there's sharks out there and everybody wants a deal, and they're going to feed on the uncertainty that we see? And if this corrects itself in a month or 2 or 3 or 6, aren't I much better going on the market at that time? These are interesting, diametrically opposed sort of decision points, but I can see merits in both of those 2 branches of that tree. And I think we can talk about that depending on the circumstances. The other part of list now, not to be too, either hyperbolic about this type of thing, is if you can list now and things are going to get worse, well, yeah, it may not be the record-setting amount you could have gotten, right? But if the market is going down, think post-2008, I'd rather list when the curve is just going down than the curve is at its bottom, right? So depending on what your timeline is, right? The other part of we talked to sellers about is, yeah, maybe last year, maybe this year prior to, or this year, if this didn't happen, we could be in these situations where we have had these seller markets where we're getting record-setting prices. But the prices are still good. And I just had this very real conversation with a seller about the buyers wanting to negotiate a little bit more because of job uncertainty, but it was still a win. It wasn't the record-setting price, but it was still a very good price, top of the market. So I think there's a lot of reasons why having that trusted resource, having that trusted team to help guide you through this process, whether you're in or you're out, is critical. The other part is, if you're currently listed, what do you do and how do you navigate that? We're not going to spend too much time on that. I want to turn it over to the team to just comment on this, and maybe I'll start with Ed on some of those topics, Ed.
Sure. I'll speak specifically, I guess, to the mortgage industry and how we have been impacted by the COVID-19 virus. At this point, we are still up and operational. Most of us are working from home, and at this point, the process has been definitely interrupted, but we've managed to be able to kind of work our way to be able to still continue to offer financing options, from application to processing to underwriting to closing to funding and servicing, and all of the other integral parts in between, the appraisal process, building inspections. Everybody is making changes and modifications to how they do business, but so far so good. It's been something that we've been able to work with. The appraisers, just as an example, at this point, last week, there was a new process that was announced that specifically to conventional financing. The appraisers now are going to be able to do desktop appraisals, which don't require inspections. They can get the information from the individual towns and take the information from the registry, and also drive-by appraisals, where they'll be able to inspect the property from outside and they're relying on realtors and or homeowners to provide the details for the inside. They're asking them to take pictures. They're asking them to, take measurements. Also doing virtual inspections to show basically the condition of the interior of the property. So again, a lot of appraisers were beginning to have concerns about, inside inspections, concerns about, people being sick or unsanitary conditions. At this point, again, modifications are being made to the normal process to allow everyone to kind of move forward. Attorneys handling closings. State of Maine has not adopted it yet, but several states around the state of Maine have now allowing for virtual closings. There is a request that's been made federally and also specifically to the state of Maine to allow virtual closings specific to Maine and also nationally. And I expect we'll probably see that occur soon, again, to allow, closings to still be finalized and try to do it with in the safety of your own environment. But the attorneys presently in the state of Maine that are handling closings have made, modifications to how they do business. They're not allowing folks like me and the realtors to go to the closing. So anybody that's not essential to the closing are not attending. They're having buyers and sellers come in separately. Several of the title companies are giving instructions immediately before you arrive at their office to be able to basically get to their office without having to touch anything, or anything else, basically. And they're discarding pens after the closing or asking you to take them home with you. So they're trying to provide the sanitary environment to be able to allow people to, feel safe when they're going through this process. So at this point, the mortgage process itself has morphed into where we're at now, and has, so far so good. We're still able to handle the volume that's coming through. The volume is enhanced due to so many refinance requests, but we're prioritizing purchase transactions. And again, at this point, it's not business as usual, but we're still being able to accommodate these requests and get these closings completed.
Ed, question for you. I heard from some folks, and I was actually working with the seller, and the buyer broker came back to us, and they were within their inspection phase, which, as we all know in the industry, they can use for any reason. They can not like the building anymore. It doesn't really have to be tied to inspections. But during that time period, they were like, we're going to back up because we were quoted this. We didn't lock our rate, which was like 3.5. And then they spiked, they said, in that 1 week period, the rates just spiked right up. Can you explain maybe why that happened and where rates are at now?
Sure. So we've had incredible volatility. We've seen days, oftentimes we'll go months at a time where we get a rate that's posted to us in the morning and that rate applies, and you see slight movements over periods of time, but generally sometimes it'll take a month or two to see an increase or a decrease of 1/8 to the rate. We're seeing days that we're seeing rate changes in 10 and 15-minute increments. And we're seeing, rate changes that are, in a course of a week, we saw rates range anywhere from 3.25 to, right up to 5%. The volatility has just been driven by, the markets, the bond market and the stock market. The Federal Reserve did step in. They're trying to, flatten those major moves that the bonds have been having. And so the Treasury now is buying a lot of these auctions at auction, buying these treasuries to try to flatten out the yield curve on the 10-year Treasury specifically. It's been positive and negative in some nature, but at the end of the day, interest rates on Friday on a standard conventional transaction were in the mid 3s on a 30-year fixed. They were in the low 3s on a 15-year fixed. Again, it's been a moving target, but rates have kind of hedged back down, not to what they were at the very lowest point, but at a level that, still historically low levels.
All right, that's wonderful. So some level of business as normal in your side of things, Ed. Certainly, you know, one of the things that has come up too is you know, if we want to call this limbo, right? And let's call it, say I'm either not going to be out there actively looking right now. If I am, obviously I want to be pre-approved and out there working. But if I want to not do that and I just say, hey, I'm going to take a little time off here, there's not many things on the market and maybe sellers aren't listing, and I'm a buyer, what are some other things that I can do right now to make sure that when the floodgates open up, and let's hope they do, and I can be back out there experiencing the spring market, whether that's now or in October, what can I be doing to right my ship to become the best buyer?
Well, the biggest concern that we have industry-wide at this point is credit. Obviously, given all the layoffs and the increase to the unemployment numbers, you know, people are going to probably start using credit cards more, and or, you know, try to get into payment plans to try to address, you know, short-term cash flow issues. And so the concerns at this point that if I were, you know, thinking about buying in the next 6 months would be, you know, to obviously make sure that I took care of my credit appropriately. If you're getting into payment plans with specific creditors, you want to make sure to ask the question of whether or not they're going to be reporting negatively, you know, any partial payment that's made. Is that going to impact my credit? So how are they going to be reporting these payments going forward? The other thing that you're going to want to think about is if you're using your credit cards to help with cash flow issues, you're going to want to make sure that, I mean, ideally in a perfect world, if you're using more than 50% of your available credit on a particular account, the credit bureaus look upon that negatively. You're considered to be a, you know, high utilization ratio. And so when you're using more than 50% of your credit, typically, you know, that is going to overall start to, you know, lower your score. And over time, you know, it doesn't take very long for those scores to get to certain levels. And what happens interest rate wide is they're very sensitive to the score. What a person can get at a, you know, at a 640 credit score versus an 800 credit score, you know, generally is probably 1 percentage point to the interest rate. And 1% to the interest rate is going to, you know, that's going to change significantly the person's ability to be able to qualify, you know, for that house and for that mortgage that they may be looking for. So it's important to ask the question to these creditors and banks, whoever you happen to be dealing with, you know, how, you know, if I change my, you know, if we agree to a certain payment schedule going forward, you know, is that going to impact my credit negatively? Are you going to be reporting this to the individual credit bureaus, you know, negatively, and try to make sure that you stay ahead of that? And again, any agreements that you're making, make sure you get them in writing. You know, either, you know, keep those emails or keep any letters that you may have agreed to, whatever the case, so that if something does happen in the future and you have something in writing to state that, you know, that this was agreed to, it's something that we as lenders are able to go back to the credit bureaus, provide this proof, and ask them to do these what's called rapid rescores, where they can remove the negative reporting and immediately basically make it so it's totally wiped away, and then replace the credit score like it never happened. So anything that you're agreeing to, make sure that you keep that documentation for future purposes.
Thank you, Ed. That was wonderful. Kaitlin, I want to, I guess, loop you in on the buy side here, and what you're doing now, and what your advice is to buyers. Maybe you can discuss how you're, you know, maybe showing properties now, and then maybe some of the just the rationale for being out there and looking, and then some of the how you're navigating as you go forward in this unique times.
So I definitely am suggesting to my buyers, they really do need to do their homework. Like Tom said, you know, make sure you're pre-screening homes. If you can't do a drive-by, do a Google map search of the property. You know, we really want to try to limit the amount of exposure we're having, for your safety, for our safety as well. You know, are there virtual tours? Like, I can absolutely go and FaceTime a property with you, if that's something you're comfortable with. Sorry, excuse me. My dog is coming into this. So make sure you're doing your drive-bys. You know, if we can do virtual tours with FaceTime, to make sure, you know, if the property is not right for you, the lot size, the neighbors, you know, if the rooms are too small, these are things we can try to eliminate up front, and not go into the properties. And that's something that, you know, we need to work closely with the list agents and the sellers as well.
Absolutely. So the and Chris, maybe you can chime in here too. Chris is a home inspector. He was recently certified as I mean, maybe you can talk about that. I don't know exactly what the certification is, but it was COVID-19 certification and safety around that. You know, what I think about is if we're trying to limit the exposure and we're trying to have these processes go very smooth, Chris, and you and I spoke about this the other day, is for sellers to do a pre-inspection, that's helpful. And how are you handling the inspections for buyers and just in general? I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Tom. Yeah, so we have made some adjustments to our process. In the past few weeks, I did complete a COVID-19 safety protocol and certification for home inspections. It does have some new protocols around personal protective equipment, sanitizing procedures of you know, your iPads, your phones, your testing equipment, even your vehicle before and after each inspection. Other steps we're asking for is definitely with the listing agents. You know, please, can you make arrange in advance to have any occupants or owners to not be in the home when we do the inspection? At least come outside, away from the property. Ideally, we'd like to do the inspection alone, but if we do have buyers and their agents that would like to come in on the inspection, we do provide protective gloves. You know, will involve a safety of how we need to conduct ourselves inside safely, and and take it from there. However, we can work virtually as well. And for the most part, you know, all of our documentation is done by e-sign. Our reports are electronic. We set payment electronically, and then also. You know, even with the client outside, as we wrap up the inspection, we can also do FaceTime. We can take a walk around the property, point out potential areas of concern, maintenance suggestions, that sort of thing, give them an opportunity to ask questions while we're right there. Also, you know, we're also available, you know, in this format as well to do a Zoom meeting, you know, to go over full inspection reports. You know, anything we see or talk about in the FaceTime, of course, would be documented, and we can go through that together. I think you're absolutely right. Changes in the horizon the argument might be there for more pre-inspections. It would allow, you know, to Kaitlin's point, allow for more due diligence by the potential buyer if they're going to you know, have that critical information prior to going to a property or making the decision to not go to a property. You know, it may even get the closing done faster as well, but definitely cut down on the traffic coming to a property during this pandemic, possibly with the pre-inspection process.
Tom, can I just cut in? To Chris's point too, you know, as a buyer's agent, we can always ask for a longer due diligence period. You know, we don't really know when this is going to end, but asking for a longer due diligence period and, you know, asking the sellers to cooperate with that and provide us more information, it's definitely going to help Chris as well as an inspector. And we're all working towards the same goal. So, you know, just throwing it out there, you know, if you are really interested in a property, you know, you can still put it under contract, ask for that longer due diligence period, and really do your homework.
Yeah, I think both of those things, guys. It's our sort of new, you know, roadmap here. It's our way that we're doing it now, and that may change. And we're used to doing things in an industry like ours in a certain way, and I think buyers are very used to that, and sellers. So when it becomes a little bit more virtual, I think that's change is tough. It's tough for everybody. You know, I think about buyers looking at properties, and oftentimes, let's just think of that stereotypical family, right? Two people, let's just say they're there at 5:30 at night because they've gotten out of work and they've got a kid or two, right? And in the past, I mean, literally what we would end up doing is everybody would go in the house. You know, of course, you want to pick out your bedroom, right? The little kid wants to go into that other little kid's bedroom and play with their toys. And when I'm listing houses, I would say to my sellers, don't de-kid your home, because there may be another child that comes in with that potential new buyer, right? And we want them to connect with that cute room with the unicorns painted on the walls. The process is different now, right? We can't have that. We may not want that child in the house at all. And if they do come in, boy, we want them to be in somebody's hands and not to be touching things. I have a 6.5-year-old, pretty tough not to get her to touch stuff. Tell her. So I'm not going to bring her into that situation anymore. We also may be in a situation where it's just you, Kaitlin, that's that virtual thing, FaceTiming people. However, if you have one other adult or two other adults there, I think we can practice safe social distancing and still go through the property. Now, we have some tips for sellers, and we have some tips for buyers. You can email us for those, and we're going to get into some specifics, right, about, hey, if you want to be even more conscientious, let's bring those things to sanitize our hands. Let's think about masks. Let's think about these other things that we can be doing. And we can share those tips for you. And Chris, I think about the inspection process too. And I know that frequently, again, if I go to the stereotypical young couple, right, they're buying their first home, they're 27, 28 years old. Who do they bring on their inspection, right? They're bringing mom and dad from Massachusetts, right? Well, maybe that's not going to happen anymore, or they switch off, right? One of them stays in the car. You're doing a little bit more work, Chris, but it's a different experience. It isn't that, you know, even that group event that we would do sometimes to have less impact on the sellers. A lot of times we in the industry would say, hey, if I'm having my home inspection, I already know the roof is going to need to be done. I'm going to bring that roofer and that boiler guy, and I'm going to have a group meeting to talk about these things. So we're not having to access the house 2 or 3 times. Well, the pre-inspection is going to help with that. And then also we may want to space those things out and have less of these meetings, or have them be one-off meetings with people. And you'd be surprised that roofer can look at the images. If you take enough of them, and maybe you take a video or you FaceTime that roofer, they can probably do that work remotely as well, right?
So Tom, I'll add, you know, as our service, we actually offer we can actually provide virtual estimates as well through our professional association with the Porch Network. So we upload our inspections, and anything we find on there, it takes about 48 hours, but they will do a virtual estimate as well using geographical local data, and and provide guaranteed estimates that will actually pay up to like 50% of an error. So for example, they'll use this data, they'll use our photos, information on the home, they'll have an engineer sign off on it, and say for example, they tell you the repair is going to be $1,000, and 2 months later you have your contractors there that say, no, this will be $1,500. This guarantee will actually pay an extra $500 to your client to get that done. It could even reduce the need for contractors on the property.
I didn't even know that existed. That's really awesome. So I want to open it up to somebody who's called in, and somebody I know and respect a great deal, Kim Dorsky. And Kim is a person who helps people transition and work in their homes. And I'm going to go back into this idea of sellers, and maybe the seller who says, you know, I want to list now, and I want to do that in an expeditious way, right? Whether I have the ability to do the work myself or not, because I want to be on the market relatively quickly, I may need to reach out to a team to help me make that happen. Now, that meeting can happen with me one-on-one. It can happen with me virtually. I can pull in a Zoom meeting like this, Kim, or again, with practices that we're able to implement now and safe social distancing, you can still have contractors in your home. And Kim is one of those contractors that we really enjoy working with, because she can help folks get their homes organized and look at it in a way that is going to be ideal for that potential seller. It can be an overwhelming process to get your home ready, and she has some great techniques. Now, the other side of this is, obviously, if we're home, right, and say we're not going to be listing, maybe we're on that branch of that tree that says, I want to wait till things get more situated, then this is an ideal time, right? This is an ideal time. And what are those things you should be doing, and what are some of those low-hanging, big impact things, cheap things maybe, that I can be doing around my house? I'm going to turn it over to Kim. Kim, you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Ken.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Everybody else can hear?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for having me. So it's a bit of a tough situation with folks. The way that we process houses, our outlets are closed. So Goodwill, Salvation Army, Habitat for Humanity, our auction places, so consignment places. I'm going to try and focus on some things for sellers that I think could be really helpful. And so we're quarantined, meaning people in general. So if you're thinking of putting your house on the market, what can you do? I think one thing that is actually, I'm trying to be positive, is advantageous. Buyers are looking online. That's where a buyer has interest or sees a house that they have interest in that's on the market. So with today's quarantining and perhaps videoing properties, I think that a seller actually has a lot more control here, who sees what. And that's what part of our business is, staging homes, working with the brokers. And so I'm looking at this because people are going to need to do this somewhat on their own. So trying to help people with, what do you do to put your best foot forward in selling your home? So a couple of things, and I know a lot of people know this, but depersonalizing your house, taking down the photos, eliminating clutter. And trust me, folks, and brokers can jump in on this, is less is definitely more. So pack up, take this opportunity to neaten up your house, eliminate the clutter, look at it really objectively. You pretend you are a buyer, pretend you're the person that is now looking online, and pack up the things that you don't need out, separating what you want to keep and take forward with you versus the things you want to get rid of. We will help you when the outlets open up to get rid of things and to sell them. Looking at those things that you've set aside to see whether you can sell or donate, the different levels there. But meanwhile, do it on your own to neaten up your house so that it can be videoed and get out there to potential buyers. Another thing, which is the biggest bang for your buck, is painting. So maybe pick up a paintbrush if you're in quarantine. There are painters that are approved contractors that can go in, but start looking around your house and just objectively. I'll tell you right now, I have a terracotta room, and I know the brokers are probably thinking, Kim, you got to paint that. Well, I know that I need to paint that if I are putting my house on the market. So look at the things that you need to do and start working on them. Start neatening up the attic. Get boxes, put the stuff in it. People do not understand chaos. So when they take a video now of your basement, your garage, your attic, because that's the way houses are going to be shown for a bit, make sure that it is neat and orderly. And people look beyond boxes, but they can't look beyond chaos. So do your own homework while you're in quarantine and to put your best foot forward there. So I guess that is my advice as far as the staging piece. And then as things start to turn around, your house is sold, then we can help with the what can be sold, how do you get rid of all the stuff, contracting the movers, how do we get in there to help you pack? We have been doing that, but we have been in homes where no one is present. So that's how we're working in homes still. So I hope that this was somewhat helpful to folks. And thanks for having me on.
Kim, stay right on for a second if you can. I want to just reiterate some of the things Kim just spoke about. And, to me, having done this, for several years, one thing that Kim said that just resonated with me, and she said a lot of things, and I'll touch base on some of them. Less is best. It is so true. And so when in doubt, if you're saying, should I take that out of the room, just do it, right? We are not in the furniture sales business. We're selling homes. And we have done side-by-side comparisons of homes where we have shot the room with carpets and a bunch of furniture in it and heavy curtains and heavy valances in these things. And then we've changed it, we've painted, we've shown off the hardwood floors versus the lovely carpets, don't get me wrong. And we've lit in more light because we had less blinds and less window treatments. And it is night and day. It allows people to be in that room. It allows them to see their own furniture in the rooms. So I think now more than ever, it's more critical to do this prior to, because people are not going to have that 3D experience of coming through, maybe, right? First impressions are incredibly important. And if somebody is saying, number one, I don't want to expose myself to this, or I want to be conscientious, not exposing my agent, the sellers. They're already checking properties off and eliminating them, right? In the past, we would just say, well, let's just go see it. Why not, right? Now, they're because of all of the stuff there, they're really looking at those pictures even more. They're really doing penetration. So it's more critical than ever to do this stuff. A few other things is objectively, right? That word that Kim used, and I love that. What I have found in my experience with sellers is it's very, very tough to be objective. So that's where you pull in somebody like myself. Kim and I can certainly come over. We have staging consultants as well that we use on our own team. So we look at it a little different. And we truly try to provide that through the lens of the buyer and the lens of that buyer and what they want to see in a property. Oftentimes there is a, hey, you have all of these things to do. Focus your limited money and limited energy on the things that are going to give you the most bang for the buck. And here they are. Oftentimes, and I've talked about this, we actually conducted a session just for sellers, which we have all of the paperwork on, which goes through top tips when you're buying a house, top tips when you're selling a house. And we have about 40 of these in 2 different documents. And some of them are really surprising. The idea is do this, not that. I'll often walk into properties and there'll be a debate between the two parties that are there. Say it's a couple, right? And one of them says, I think we should do this. The other one says, well, no, I don't think you should do that. So having that independent person, that truly objective person to help you decide with our limited time and limited budgets, the best things to do for the most impact, I think is a critical part of that. The other part I'll share is reach out to pros, reach out to people to help you. As long as they're being safe, they can still do their jobs and you're not going to get bogged down. Some of the folks that we have, I guess, the most challenge with are people who are truly handy. I'll do it myself. I can do it myself. I don't want to pay for that. That's great. But if it takes you 5 times as long, we may be missing either the market that we want to be in right now or the market which turns in the future. Anything that sparked more stuff there, Kim, you want to touch base on?
No, I think you summarized it well. I think it is, I think it's tough for folks to be objective in their own home. I think having someone outline it, and it can even be done by video. I mean, any of the brokers or myself, you take a room and you pan a shot of it and say, what needs to change here? Well, an immediate punch list is going to come to mind for someone who's objective. So, you know, I think that the staging piece can be done on your own with some guidance, okay? And just remembering that less is more. And also, if you do invest in having some outside contractors in to do painting or whatever it might be, staging, money put towards staging your home is well worth it, because the asking price is often increased. Reductions may not happen if you need a new roof or you need something structurally done. And Tom can speak to that point. But, you know, in this market, seeing your house in the best light and online that's where you're going to hook the interest. So put your best foot forward and seek professional help if you think you can't do it yourself. And you'll have success if you kind of step away from it and you know, don't take it personally. This is what you need to do. You're selling your biggest asset. So
absolutely. You know, and Kim, you just made me think of some of the analogies I use for folks is, if you were going to sell your used car, you would take it to be detailed, right? You may even put some new tires on it. You would go to some level of getting it tuned up and these type of things to increase that value and have less drama out of the person who says, I want it, but I'm going to take it to my shop. This is like that, but on a much bigger scale with bigger stakes. Take it serious. And I think, you know, again, reach out to us. We have a lot of things that can be very surprising. Very low amount of effort and energy and dollars for big impact. Many times we'll have people ask us, hey, should I put in a brand new kitchen? Usually that's not the case. Again, we can help you pivot from do this, not that, right? One of my favorite things and things that we often deal with is folks who say, I'm going to spend time on that garage. I'm going to spend a couple days out there organizing that, or I'm going to go down my basement. I'm going to take care of that basement. It's going to be spick and span. They're not living in your basement. They're going to spend 30 seconds looking at your garage. Spend your precious resources and your time in your home, the first and second floor, the living areas, right? Now, those things can be taken care of, but they're very secondary. None of us have unlimited budgets. None of us have unlimited time. We're home, but we're dealing with schooling our own kids or doing other things. So we can help you navigate that. We can help you figure that out. But this is an opportune time, whether it's as a buyer to get yourself ready or get out there because there's less competition. The rates are great. The deals are probably great. And sellers may be motivated. Or as a seller, hey, maybe I do want to list now. Maybe I want to get on with my life. Maybe I think things are maybe going to get worse. I don't know what that is. Maybe I want to get it on the market now, or maybe I want to prep and then get on at some time in the future. Either way, You've got a great team here. Kim, give us the name of your company and quickly your contact information. Thank you for dialing in today. You're an honorary panelist.
Thank you for having me. You guys were great. Simply Sized Home is the name of our company. We're home downsizers and moving managers and staging consultants. Our phone number is 358-4600. And we have a great new website, simplysizedhome.com.
Thank you, Kim. So I want to, I guess, take a moment now. I think there's been some questions that have come in. Maybe we want to field some of those. And I think every panelist can see some of these questions. I don't know if folks, maybe Ed, you can take a question here about, it does not appear that residential mortgage rates, 15 and 30-year fixed, have fallen in line with recent Fed rate reductions. Are you seeing that question, Ed?
I am.
Okay, and why?
That's probably a webinar in and of itself. Anybody that wants a further explanation of what is in the market, my recommendation would be to just send me an email, and I've got a nice article that kind of gives all of the the pros and cons of what's happened in the market and how that has kind of moved rates. And it's just not one answer. There's lots and lots of pieces to it. So I know my email was put up earlier, but if anybody wants a full explanation, Gosselin at totalmortgage.com. And so with all of the volatility, so what's happening in the markets, the simplest explanation has been that with all of the volatility in the market, with the stock market obviously going down so significantly, generally when that happens, you normally will see a flight to quality. Usually people will put their money from the stock market into bonds. Well, that hasn't happened. And so, the normal kind of action of what happens hasn't. And so subsequently, bond yields have increased dramatically from where they were at the lows initially when the Fed first did their reduction. And so money isn't going into bonds, it's more going into, people are kind of putting themselves into cash positions. And so, the Fed stimulus package, part of that was that they're now trying to stabilize treasuries by buying back these treasuries at auction. And that has happened, and that's caused some stability. At the same time, because of the fact that it's truly not market driven, it's caused some instability with lenders in terms of how they hedge the market. And so, the instability, has, the uncertainty has caused the volatility. And subsequently, that lenders are trying to position themselves to be able to, on these rate calls, being able to provide locked rates. They're not, because of the volatility of the market, again, lenders are hedging high to protect themselves at this point. So again, if somebody wants to send me an email, I'm happy to share the article of all the how one thing pushing is causing, somebody else to shove, and subsequently where we're at with rates. But rates have kind of flattened out somewhat. And I guess we'll just see where things go going forward.
Thank you, Ed. Ben, can you talk a little bit about multifamilies? And there's a question here which is more about first-time home buyers who are interested in multifamilies. But maybe we can talk about multis and the unique challenges around those, either from a legal sense or a showing sense. And Kaitlin, maybe you can talk about this. We'll take that subject briefly.
Sure, I'll chime in briefly. The obvious issue, from a COVID-19 standpoint and multifamily properties is going and seeing those units. I think oftentimes you're going to be finding now more so than usual that if you were going to see those multifamily units that are going to be inhabited. And frankly, there are going to be some issues. Plenty of people would be uncomfortable, and I may even be included in that as well. If I were living in an apartment and the owner of the building was looking to sell, of having additional people coming through in the middle of a pandemic. And so I think everything that we've talked about previously in terms of attempting to the extent possible to make everything digital, you know, from a showing to especially showing a property is going to be more of an issue. You know, if you're also selling a multifamily and a potential buyer is wanting to have that multifamily uninhabited, obviously there's the added wrinkle of the fact that the eviction process has completely stalled at this point. From what we know, Maine courts aren't going to be looking at evictions or anything else that's not emergency until May 1st at the absolute earliest. And I think, you know, most people would probably expect that to be extended anymore. And so, you know, the word of caution for any potential sellers of multifamilies out there also is, understandably, there may be cash flow challenges now with folks not being able to afford their rents. You know, I think to the extent that you can be working out payment arrangements with those tenants, I think that's going to be your best bet to keep things as stable as possible. But the, you know, the word of caution is that Maine is very much not a self-help state, and so if you have a tenant in nearly all situations, even if they are not current on their rent, an option that is not available to you at this point is to be going and shutting off utilities or doing anything else that may, you know, may lead them to be living in a place that's not habitable. So, you know, those are challenges that exist always, but I think, you know, we need to reemphasize that, you know, the way to go through an eviction process remains the same in Maine, except for the very large caveat that the courts just aren't accepting those now. And so to the extent that, you know, you have questions about that, I think the best bet is always to consult with legal counsel to figure out what you can and can't do, myself included.
Yeah, so, you know, and this is something, everybody, or this is an introduction. We're getting towards the end of this hour and a half that we had set aside for this. So I want to, you know, take a few more final comments from all of our panelists. And I want to, you know, sort of play on what Ben just spoke about there. There are wonderful people out there, and doing what I've done for a living for nearly 20 years, we've had the good fortune to surround ourselves with the best contractors in the business to help our clients navigate these waters. And we're going to be able to give you a little bit of information here today, but we're a resource. And I think one of the things that Ben talked about is the idea of you going to your accountant, your CPA for things that we don't know about. And I'm not an expert in everything. I know my little niche, and I think I know it really well. I'm an expert at very few things. And what we can do as well is if you reach out to any one of us, we'll provide you with what we're experts in, but then we can set you up with and connect you with other people in the industry. And I know Jensen Baird has a fabulous team of attorneys that specialize in a whole bunch of different things. And we've dealt with Charlie Katz-Levy and Ben's team for a lot of our real estate questions and those things. So fabulous team there. I want to get some final comments. And Chris, maybe we start with you sharing a little bit more, and then we'll just do a quick wrap up.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for having me here today. I am available as a resource, even if I'm not your home inspector. Should you see anything on a home when you're getting ready to list it, you might have a question about how someone might react to it or what an inspector may see, feel free to snap a photo of it, email it to me, text it to me. I'd be happy to give you my opinion on it.
And Chris, you mentioned something about, was that in was it a moving companies or something like that?
Yeah, so previously I have a background in logistics as well, and recently met with, just connected with some old colleagues, and they're better known as Allied and Coles, or Allied Moving here in Portland. Allen and Coles is what they're called. They have a few different names. One is also ABC Moving, but recently they made me aware of a service they were offering. I don't know how it's affected now with the recent pandemic, but I believe it was a few $100s. They would come in and, anything that they'd want to remove in terms of clutter, they would come and they would store as part of that fee, store it free for 30 days. And while they're there, give you an estimate for the cost of moving your home, should you want to hire them for that. So that might be a tool you folks could use. If I'd be happy to pass on my friend's contact information if that's of use to anybody. But I know probably one problem you run into, well, I've got all this clutter, but I don't have where to put it while you're showing my home. So I thought it was kind of a neat approach to the market.
I agree, Chris, and that's what we say to a lot of folks. You're going to have to pack this eventually, so why not pre-pack, pre-move? And if you think about storage units, right? There's a lot of them across town. There's new ones popping up, as opposed to, again, being saddled and strapped by the stuff you currently have, and what do I do with it, and how do I organize my house when we all have too much, right? So number one, you can give up that garage, right? Pack it in there if you need to. Pack more down in your basement versus cleaning it up and organizing it so you have more room in the upstairs. And then beyond that, obviously, reach out to ABC, reach out to Local Muscle, reach out to some of our other movers to help if you need that help, or rent the U-Haul and rent the storage unit so that you're not having it in your house, right? So that the experience when you finally go on the market, and Kim and her team can help with that. Ed, any final thoughts?
Sure. Again, understand that our process can be completed electronically throughout the entire loan scenario. From application or pre-qualification, we can do that either over the phone or online. Processing, underwriting, and closing can all be done remotely. All of the disclosures can be docu-signed from home. All your requested documents that we need in terms of the approval process can be uploaded electronically safely into your loan portal. So again, understand that we can completely do all of these steps hands-free. And if you have any questions along the way, feel free to either give me a call or send me an email, and I'm happy to assist with any questions.
Okay, and at the end of this, I'm going to leave up the full contact list of all of our panelists so you guys can reach out. So maybe a final word from Ben.
Sure. I think just to echo on what everybody else has been saying, we're living in somewhat uncertain times, and information is changing daily. And so, the words of wisdom I would have is don't guess. There are plenty of uncertainties out there right now that hopefully you can find others who would be able to help you out. Like Tom mentioned, Jensen Baird is a full service law firm. I do most of my work advising municipalities, but also advising owners of properties, developers, real estate professionals on all things zoning related and land use related, but also do some landlord and tenant work, and also have a whole number of colleagues who work in all different fields of law. And so never hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to help. And if I can't answer the question, I'll pass it along to somebody who can.
I was told you're the COVID-19 expert over there too. So.
That's a new title. I'll go with COVID-19 czar, I guess. That has a little better ring to it. But whatever that means, it means that I just have to keep reading constantly.
800 pages. Wow. Kaitlin, final words for buyers, or just final words in general?
So real quick for buyers, interest rates are at a historic low. Real estate is a secure investment. People still need a place to live. It's inevitable. And right now there's less competition, you know, as we went over. So now may be your time.
Yeah, I think it is interesting, right? Call it contrarian investment philosophy. I do think, you know, you're going to have folks, whether they be sellers or buyers, that are in the market now. And if I'm a buyer and you know, I didn't really like what was going on the last several years. I mean, you got to think of ourselves and put ourselves back in those shoes of being one of 30 people at an open house, and the questions we would get with buyer brokers, because I mostly deal with sellers, were how many offers do you have? How high over the list price do I need to go to get it? And people offering 10 and 20 and $30,000 over the list price, which was already a high price, and not getting their home. Talk about deflating, right? So let's just think about our current situation in the light of that. And it may mean that savvy buyers are out there and they're looking, and they should be looking. And they can enjoy good interest rates. Maybe we have a temporary dip in the market now. And if we project ahead, maybe it's going to be the folks that were operating against the stream who got the good deals. So that's all the time we have. We're about 3 minutes prior to our 90 minutes. I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to also just reiterate that out of this meeting, again, it will be on our Benchmark Facebook page. It'll be available there for people to share. We're going to share it out there. We're going to have some information that we send out through Facebook and through other outlets in our emails for folks that all of the panelists' information will be available, and any of the resources and connections that we can make there. So in the meantime, I want to go back to what we started out with, this idea of virtual house calls and one-on-one house calls. If you want to reach out to me to set that up, you can reach out to us at landryteam@benchmarkmaine.com, and Maine is spelled right out. You can also call the office at 207-775-0248. You can set up that virtual thing. We can go through, and as Kim talked about, we can help you. We can be that objective resource to help you decide what to do and what not to do. As Kaitlin said, there's a pretty good chance that it's not a bad time to be a buyer. It's also maybe not a bad time to be a seller, and we can help you through your particular situation if you reach out to us. The virtual showings is something Kaitlin is ready to do, and we have a team of buyer brokers ready to help. This is a little bit more labor intensive. I think it's a little more labor intensive for Chris, a little bit different way of doing business for Ed and the entire teams that are doing this, but we're here to help. We're here to make this happen. We're here to be safe. We also have this Jumpstarter program, and Ed talked about it from his side of things, where you get everything ready. Let's get it ready on the sales side. Let's get it ready on the buy side, whether you want to go now or whether you want to go on the market and look in the future. Let's get your credit in order. Let's get you pre-qualified. Let's help you work on that nice letter for those sellers that when you submit your offer, it's that nice personal touch, even if it's not a multiple offer situation. And then on the sales side, let's work through getting your house decluttered. Let's work through some of those home improvements, which are surprising. A lot of them are not big ticket items. But let us help you. Have a team around you that can help you navigate this process, even in challenging times. And I think one of the final things I want to say to you is when things are easy, you know, when the market's good, you can put a sign in front of your house on a paper plate and say for sale, right? It's not difficult. You could probably walk into an open house and just make the offer. Now more than ever, trusted, experienced team with you through the process is more important than ever. So reach out to us. I'm going to put up the screen share here, which will have the contact information for all of our panelists one more time. And I'll let that be up there. Stand by, I'll get rid of the sidebar. So I'll let that stay up there for a little while. Thank you so much. I'm wishing you and your family safety. I'm wishing you well, and I'm wishing all of our society a speedy transition out of this into something better soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.